Ethan Strauss covered the Warriors for years. He wrote The Victory Machine, The Making and Unmaking of the Warriors Dynasty. He hosts the Warriors in an NBA podcast. Very smart and thoughtful house of Strauss. You know, it seems to me, I remember stories, Ethan. There was a story years ago about Draymond and Kerr yelling at each other, and everybody could hear it behind closed doors. And that, Draymond's a handful, but it does feel like to me that Kerr's really come to terms with his value. And not that maybe he didn't understand it early, but when you were covering this team, did you feel like there was much more push and pull with Draymond and Kerr that there is now?
I just think that they're eternally kind of at odds, but they also realize the value of one another and they make do with it. I mean, Steve gets annoyed with Draymond. That is without a question. But Steve is also very much acquainted with his value. He's the kind of player that Steve values. Steve, it's funny. It's funny, Colin. You would think that Steve would be all about offensive players. He is ruthless to them. He is ruthless with players who are in the Steve Kerr mold of providing offense but no defense. The guy he values is the guy he could never really be, and that's Draymond Green. So there's always going to be that discord. But I saw recently that Draymond was complimenting Steve Kerr. Maybe it's a turnaround. Maybe it's a moment in the relationship where, like an old married couple, you just accept what the other one is, and you don't try to argue. You don't try to make them into somebody they're not, and you just go forward.
You know, Ethan, I've suggested this to friends that are Warrior fans. I've suggested it on the air that what happens to dynasties, they fall in love with players, and you got to fall in like with them. Now, Steph Curry can stay as long as he wants, as long as he's healthy. But I do look at Klay, and I think I've got multiple injuries. He's not the same player. Wiggins is expensive, and now he's younger, and you know, there's a lot of big salaries here and a lot of interesting young components. Jordan Poole, Kuminga, we don't know Wiseman, Moody. What do you think the future of Klay is? Could you ever see them breaking up the Splash Brothers?
That's the big question. That's the big question that hangs over everything, because they did fall in love with Klay. They didn't fall in like with Klay. And yeah, Joe Lacob, the owner of the Warriors, he's a ruthless venture capitalist. He's almost reptilian, except there's a lot of ego to Joe Lacob. And Klay Thompson is the first big bet the Warriors made. Steph Curry predates Joe Lacob. That's why, even though Joe knows enough to say that Steph is great, he's going to pivot to talking about everything else, because he's the everything else. And the everything else started with Klay Thompson. So it's a tricky situation. I'm having memories to Klay's Game 6 against the Oklahoma City Thunder in 2016. And what you see at the end of that game is Joe Lacob on his knees doing the I'm not worthy worship of Klay. So I think there's a little bit of heart there. I think it would be so hard for them to pivot away from Klay. And there are two schools of thought. One school is that Klay is cooked and he's not that guy anymore. The other school is that he is one offseason away from being who he is. And that's why it's such a road fork for the Warriors. They have to choose one way or the other, because right now it just seems like in these finals, maybe he'll give you one great game out of 4, but consistently he is not the Klay Thompson that we remember.
You had your moments with Kevin Durant, and Kevin's one of those athletes like Aaron Rodgers that he's a little sensitive, but I appreciate in both instances they're willing to talk about stuff and fire back at media because it's authentic. Most guys don't. Aaron will. I kind of like it. Kevin Durant will. I kind of like it. They can fire back at me. I think it's interesting. There's no way he's watching this and rooting for the Warriors, Ethan, to win this series. No. What do you think? What do you think he thinks watching this?
I mean, this is his central critique of us. This is what he hates about us. He has made this kind of criticism, and it's a little bit difficult to follow, but I follow it. He's mad at us for making him want things he wouldn't otherwise want. When I say he, I mean everybody. This is the thing that makes him mad. He feels like because we're going to criticize him, because we're going to identify that they won without him, that he can't just root for the Warriors like he would ordinarily want to root for the Warriors. This was something that he would really stress. That's something that he would fixate on, that you make me want things I don't want to want. Well, I think that's probably happening. And well, like you're saying, Colin, I think he He can't possibly want them to win. There's
Yeah.
just no way. It goes against human instinct. That's not a criticism of him. That's just the human condition.
And I'm going to ask you Warrior-centric questions here because you cover the league, but you have a sense of this, is that you've watched so many Warriors playoff series before. The one thing that would worry me is that the Celtics' 4 best players are in their prime and the Warriors aren't. And it part of me, I think they're going through a tough transition where they're just a little older than you'd like, but the young players aren't ready yet. And so that's kind of a remarkable thing is that they're not ideal. Klay's off an injury. Draymond, Steph have been banged up. It's not ideal. So if they win, it's and then Klay next year probably is better. This could be scary for the league because they're not supposed to win. But you've watched so many series through the years. When through 8 quarters, do you like Golden State to win? How do you feel about this team that you virtually know every bounce of every dribble in the last decade?
If I had to pick one team to win, it would be Golden State. I'm reminded of Dave Portnoy, the president of Barstool, Celtics super fan. He did a live stream, a video after the game too. And he said, as crazy as it sounds, that he felt even after the blowout that the Celtics are the better team. I thought, that's not so crazy. I get it. The Warriors got a favorable whistle in game 2, and the Celtics have so many good guys, and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, they seem like they can get a clean three-pointer whenever they want it, but you don't always win when you're the best team. I mean, I know that sounds crazy. Sometimes you're not ready to win, even if you're the best team as far as talent is concerned. In 2012, were the Thunder the best team against the Miami Heat? I mean, certainly as far as talent goes, but they weren't ready. So I guess what I'm saying to you, Colin, is that I don't know if the Celtics are necessarily ready. They're complaining about Draymond. They're complaining about how they didn't call things against Draymond. And you know what? Draymond said, it's what you said earlier. It's the finals. The finals are different. You would know that if you've been in the finals. Ask the Warriors about that in 2016. Ask the Warriors about what it was like against the Cavs. I mean, I was in those locker rooms. Steph Curry was scratched up. His jersey looked like it would fit Shaq because it was so stretched out from being grabbed off the ball. The refs swallow the whistle. They don't want to determine it. Zach Zarba does not want to determine the NBA Finals, and you have to understand that, and you have to be able to adjust. I'm not sure the Celtics are used to it, as talented as they are.
No, I said this, Joy is my witness before this series. I said, what concerns me if I was the Celtics, I believe they could outplay the Warriors in the finals and lose in 6. I really do. I don't know if it's the right time. I think it's really, really close for them. Finally, we, the Jordan Poole Steph's very unique that he can root for people that could eventually replace him. He probably has so much confidence he's not going to be replaced. But I look at Jordan Poole and I think to myself, he's still inconsistent. This could be his best value. And I watch Wiggins and he drives me crazy at times and I think, oh boy, maybe they've gotten the most out of him. Somebody's going to be moved here. Somebody's going to be moved. And as I watched Poole last night, I think, is he a replacement for Steph or is he a great 28th pick first round? Perfect time to move him. High profile in the finals. What do you think they do with Wiggins and Poole, who are not foundational pieces, but they have value with all these big contracts? What do you think they do with those two?
I think they should keep Poole. I like betting on hard work. Poole is a legendary hard worker. And with the talent and the skill that he has, and we're seeing the flaws. Defensively, very flawed. Attacked often in this postseason. But I think they'll want to keep him. I think Wiggins, it's a little bit trickier. But I don't necessarily think they're all about flipping one of these younger guys for a big fish. That's just not the mentality. That's not the venture capitalist mentality of a Joe Lacob. He is loath to part with these draft picks. He is so into the idea that a draft pick, you pay very little and you get a whole lot. He is so into that mentality. So to what you're saying, yeah, I think if a lot of people were running this team, they would try to flip those assets. I just don't think that's how the Warriors operate. And it's a credit to Steph Curry and a credit to Draymond Green, because in a lot of situations, the superstars would bellyache. They would get angry about this timeline situation. But Steph has accepted it. No matter how he feels internally, he's accepted it externally. And hey, They're back in the finals.
Yeah. Ethan Strauss, go to House of Strauss, his NBA podcast. Highly thoughtful. Great seeing you again, bud.
Fantastic, Colin. Anytime, man.
You bet. It's a really good point at the end. The owner of the team, the venture capitalist, he's not going to just throw money at you. He wants to draft and develop. They're in a weird spot, the Warriors, because Kuminga, I think Kuminga is going to be a tremendous player. Moody's really interesting. Jordan Poole's classic Warriors. End of the first round, G League, they move him up. And then you have, so they're a little older than you'd like, and a little, in this pool of a little younger than you'd like Wiseman. And you're trying to kind of balance it and win a finals. Whereas the Celtics are the opposite. They got their four. Their defensive big, their defensive guard, their star, their really talented guy, Jaylen Brown. They've got their four, and they can add little pieces to it. But their four, they're going to be in their prime for the next 4 years. So they got to win championships. The problem for Boston is Chris Middleton's coming back for Milwaukee. And I think Philadelphia is going to move off Harden, and eventually I think Maxi's becoming a star player. So they got Embiid, Maxey, and Tobias. They don't have to make big swings here. So, and Miami's always competitive. So, like, there's a little bit of pressure on Boston. Like, okay, now you go home with home court advantage. I am fascinated to watch Game 3. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.